Michael, my apologies first that I will not be able to pronounce the total name. You can pronounce it for me?
Let me get this out of the way.
Yeah.
Michael Ballé.
Michael Ballé.
Perfect.
Hi, welcome to Dr. M's podcast. This is the 59th episode, and all my podcast is dedicated to my sensei, Masaki Mai. The guest speaker today is Michael Ballé, and he's going to talk to us on the subject turning lean efforts into business value. Michael, I'll be calling him Michael, is a co-founder of Institut Lean France. His main focus is on adopting Toyota's TPS as a learning system to craft one's own lean strategy to seek greater value and business success. Michael has studied lean transformation efforts for 30 years across various sectors uh, and is a leading proponent of lean as an enterprise strategy. Further, he is a business writer, executive coach, is a co-author of best-selling books, The Goldmine Trilogy, The Lean Strategy, Raise the Bar, and he is five-time Shingo Award recipient. He is an author of 17 books. All of them are displayed over here. And it's over to Michael or Michael Ballé for his presentation on turning lean efforts into business values. Over to you, Michael. So, Michael, namaste. This is Dr. M from Mumbai, and the West abbreviated my name because they could not pronounce my name as Dr. Mohan Parmeshwaran, in as much as I cannot pronounce your name. So I'm going to call you Michael with your permission. But
Well, you can call me Dr. M as well.
yeah, you can, and we can talk about
We can both be Dr. M. This is going to
yeah,
confuse everybody.
one of these days we can talk about since you have been to India and you have seen the spirituality, etc. in India, there is a significance of M which we will share one of these days. Okay, but
Pleasure.
right. So
What do you want to know? I'm
the
still
thing
in
is,
India now. Now I'm still in India, so you have to bring me back.
come back anytime to India. So there are two factors in this which you have mentioned. One is business, the other is value. And in one of your posts, you had also mentioned, the best I recollect, is the business problem has to be looked
Oh
after
no.
from the business perspective, and the lean problems or issues with respect to the room.
What happens in again, it's back to the history of business. The history of business is mass production. So this is all people know. This is what they grow up with. And mass production is about specialization. So everybody's very specialized. So because everybody is specialized, what you have is that the business people look at things with they look for business problems, usually in the numbers. So they will look at the profit and loss or the budgets, and then they would look for business solutions, which would usually be like best practices from Harvard Business Review consultant. But these are business things, and then you have people who got interested in lean, and they will look for lean problems, shop floor problems, you know, flow problems, standardized work problems, and they would look for lean solutions, lean countermeasures, which is how do you fix, how do you put in, how do you set up standard of work. So, and in fact, these people hardly ever talk to each other, and so there are some misunderstandings about Lean from the history of it. And it did start with, as you said, with Shingo. Now, of course, when you talk to Albert, I co-wrote a book with Henri Fiume, who was his financial director. When you talk to my dad, they knew what they were doing. So basically, they would bring in these consultants, and yes, they would ask them to do projects. But then they knew what to do with the projects. It was a model line idea, and they used, as a CEO, you use the model line, and then you teach people, and so they go on and do it themselves. But I remember the time where consultants thought it was fashionable. Machine Change the World had just come out. Everybody wanted to do Lean, and they thought that they could lean a company by stacking projects. So you do all these Kaizen Blitz and Kaizen events, and you thought that if you sum up all these Kaizen events, somehow you have business value, which is never true. So there's a lot of disappointment in Lean. All these people say, well, we did Lean very hard. We had these consultants come in, and they did all these Kaizen events, or they did these project charters or whatever they are. And you never find the results. You always have the results on the Gemba because you put a lot of resource. You have the consultant, you have all people, you have the group. So you will have a physical result, but you never find the results at the bottom line. So you have these programs, and then they usually run from 2 to 3 years. You have a lot of enthusiasm, but still today, you have a lot of enthusiasm for 2 years. And the CFO says, okay, I can see all the money we spent, but I don't see the payback. And then you have a lot of confusion where people are trying to find the payback in the improvements they made, and they don't. But nobody's changed their mind. They're still working in a very tailorist, specialized world. So because it's specialized, and because as it's the one thing that Dr. Imai struggled with most of his life, and it's only in his last book that he got it. It's because processes are not synchronized. If you fix one bit of the process with a Kaizen event, you do have a result, but it doesn't translate into the business value. And in order to get the business value, you have to look at the company as a whole, which is you have to look at it from the business point of view and understand what you do with a Kaizen. So I was very fortunate because I was taught clearly by my father, who was a businessman before he discovered Lean. And then I worked closely with Henri Fiume, who was a businessman and a financial actually director before he got to Lean. And so I come from a very different tradition of Lean, where we look for business value and we understand where Kaizen, where Lean can actually bring business value. And this is completely different because it means that rather than build up a stack of projects hoping it will deliver value, what you realize is that you have to teach executives to think about TPS so they make leaner decisions. So it's a completely different ballgame.
So, how do you define the start of a business and the end of a business? And I'm going to speak to you very freely of what I am, being a student of Deming these days. And as I said, we started practicing Kaizen, etc., with Masaki, my sensei. But I also got into the same issue of getting successes project after projects, but then the CEO said, show me in my balance sheet or in my profit and loss account, where does it come in? So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is got to really define, because as I said, business is business, and Galbraith said the business is all about making money, and then suddenly...
That's ridiculous. Of course, it's not all about making money. But that way, making money is necessary, and making money is good, and you have to. It's interesting from a business point of view, but a business clearly can't be all about making money. What happens? Look at what happens in the world with Boeing or whatever. Every time executives think business is all about making money, they make the worst decisions in the mind because they don't understand making money. Now, when you look at the business, you're asking where do you start with the business? Let's start with the accounts. You have a top line and a bottom line. Within this, you have a top line that you have the cost of goods sold, Then you have SG&A, you have all the marketing expenses, all these are important. Then you have exceptional costs, and you have all the financial gains and losses. Now, what is interesting with this is that nobody asks where the top line comes from. It's magic. You just take the number from the last year and you project it. It's the financials, the MBA way of thinking doesn't look at the top line. Then nobody understands why the bottom line comes on, because there are so many exceptional things that go into the exceptional line. Now, if you understand about what it means making money, where's the value, the top line comes from loyal customers, your customer base. That's what it is. The customer base that will repurchase. So the first thing about where does this business start? If it's useful to customers, if customers actually have a high opinion of what you do and they want more. So that's what makes the top line. So that's the first thing you should worry about, is how everybody's worried about taking new customers, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is how do you maintain your existing customer base. And this is where you get into quality, because any customer, if you have enough marketing, will try your product once. But then they have their own experience with it. And if they don't have a good experience, then they won't try the product. You won't have a growing customer base. You have customer churn. So the first focus of business, where the business starts, is with customers. Of course, it's with customers. And satisfy customers that create a customer base, which creates a top line. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when you look at it this way, you have this balance that you need to service customers today in a way that they'll stay customers and bring others along. So you have this very interesting balance between, clearly, if you don't take care of today, you will have no tomorrow. But also, if you don't look at tomorrow, you won't have any tomorrow either. Because it's not just a matter of making money from customers now. It's a matter of making money from customers in a way that they will remain customers. So this is the biggest thing about you start with customers with a business. Now, the interesting thing is that you have exactly the same reasoning with your people and your suppliers. Because if you keep changing your suppliers, or if you keep driving them to the ground and so forth, you will lose your top line because you will not deliver. So this is how you see the whole business. And then the making money part is to realize that everything has a cost, has a normal cost. We're here today, all of this is a cost, it has a normal cost. But then we add the cost of our mistakes. Every mistake has to be paid for. So there's a nut in the fruit, there's the prune, there's a nut, there's the normal, there's the basic cost. You can't go away from this. But then what Lean does is that you look at the extra cost you put in from defects, from rework, from inventory, from all these things that create costs, which end up in the bottom line. So this is how you look at the business. You look at the top line, you look at the bottom line. Usually what happens because of the reporting systems is people are obsessed with the operational costs, the cost of goods sold. But that's just because they can see it's just looking for the key under the lamppost because there's light. That's just the cost you see. But when you look at it, I think the marketing is such an important cost. Of course it is. And then all of the wrong investments that you make, that you put into exceptional costs, that's still cost. You see what I mean? Cost is the total thing. So looking at business is really about understanding where does your top line really come from? And where does your bottom line really come from?
Yeah, so this leads me to another question. And since, as I said, I'm studying Deming, and since you mentioned customers, the famous Deming flow diagram starts with the customer and then it goes back to the customers. And then it even treats your suppliers as a part of the same family. And Toyota,
it's a flow. It's a part of the system. There's no such thing as a supply chain. That's, again, it's a misconception. There's a value network. you add value from different people, and this value goes to customers, and in exchange they give you their paycheck. And so if you don't have too much waste, let's look at it this way. You're talking about Deming. Let's look at variation. If you look at any business, let's look at their best week in a year. So the best week, or say it's lucky because it's a, I don't know, Black Friday, whatever, something silly. But let's look at 2 or 3 best weeks in the year. And you ask, not clearly there's variation in the system, as Deming would say. So you have 3 weeks that are excellent, and then you have all the other weeks that aren't so good. Where does this value go? You can visualize the business best week every week. It's not. Clearly, the results are not that. So clearly, the value evaporates somewhere. Now, this is what we need to understand. And I'm completely Deming fan. Again, it's the same thinking about variation. We need to understand what are the causes of the variation. So why don't we have a best week every week? And this is not magic. This is because we do things for this not to happen. So for me, the study of lean is about understanding what it is that we do that is silly, that stops us from having the best week every week. The business is set up for the best week every week. It's there, it's in the business. You see what I mean? It's there, it's in the investment, there's all the things but then we do things to stop it working. And now where it gets really interesting is that I find that most of the management so-called best practices are doing things to stop the business working.
Why do you say that?
Because just inventory, just take opportunity, best practices, do exactly what your competitors do. Think of the 5 forces of Michael Porter. I mean, if you follow that, unless you're a monopoly, you're just driving your business into the ground. Paying people less so you piss them off. Firing workers where you don't understand if you have capacity. Overburdening other workers so that they can't deliver. All these decisions, all these so-called best practices, all these things that people are taught to do, it's just to stop the flow of value in the business, because they're all trying to optimize different bits and they don't understand the synchronicity of it. But my point is that the business is designed to make money if it makes the best week every week. So we have this understanding of variation from Deming, and then we need the profound knowledge from Deming. This idea he had a profound knowledge. The knowledge is what it is we do that stops it, that creates the variation. And then, of course, there's a part of Deming that nobody looks at, it's the psychology. And the psychology tells you that most executives are not very mature emotionally. They're chosen for their aggressivity, for how well they speak. So they sell their projects. But what we want to have synchronicity is collaborative problem solving, is staying cool with information, is being have high expectations from people, but giving them respect and safety as well. Do you see what I mean? A number of things that need a lot of emotional maturity. And a lot of these executives that have read the goal and believe it's all about bottlenecks and making money, it's not very emotionally mature. It's just not true.
So, you're talking about recently I was reading a book by Siobhan. She's from Australia. She has written this book called The Hive Mindset about the bees, etc. And she said, in an organization, it is not only the intelligent quotient or the intelligence and the emotional quotient that you require the collective intelligence of all together. And that made a lot of sense to me, because we do form cross-functional group, etc., etc. And one of the things that I could never understand was to have, sorry for that little bit of smile, which is called the, when you have the group doing brainstorming. And I found
That's ridiculous. I mean, brainstorming is a ridiculous thing. Come on.
so. But then Siobhan was making a point of collective intelligence
Yeah.
of
These concepts, I come from that background. I come from knowledge of science, and these concepts are interesting from the outside if you look at bees or ants. But it's very hard to understand what it means from the inside. And this is where TPS is so brilliant. Tact time is brilliant. Now, most people look from the tailorist world, look at production rate. You need to have, let's say, 1,000 products in a month, okay? But 1,000 products in a month, again, bear in mind Deming, means that we could have very slow start to the month. And then at the last week of the month, you know, suddenly you produce 100 and then 200 and then third week 400 and suddenly at the last end you produce 600 and then you have 1,000 and so you have a lot of variation. Yeah. Now when you think about takt time, and it means I can't calculate like this, but it means every so often, let's say every hour product. Then you can't do this. It takes a variation out because it creates synchronicity to the flow. So there is a device to create the collective intelligence. It doesn't happen by accident. And this is what the TPS is brilliant about. They have a number of methods to create that collective intelligence.
the collective intelligence also, I mean, because I remember your first book on systems. I think you wrote it somewhere around 1994. I have not read it, but I read the brief of it. I thought it was influenced by Peter Senge, the best I could understand.
And Deming, there's a lot of Deming in the book.
Peter
because it's an understanding of Peter Senge's dynamic systems and something that is not in Senge, but the impact of variation within the dynamics. And you have to blend in these two things to understand what goes on. There's the impact of variation within the dynamic is very important.
So in the fifth discipline, one of the things that Peter Senge does talk about, now he has brought out another edition, is how do you align yourself, exactly what you were talking about. How do you synchronize? How do you align through the true north so that all of them work towards a particular
that's the point. At the point, you need shared humans to build organization needs shared goals. That's what the humans were like this. We will come together for a goal. We were discussing India, and his plant managers were retiring from me. His goal was building a temple in the village. That was a shared goal, and he got the two enemy families to reconcile at the death of his father to build a temple. That's what people do. They share a goal, and when they share a goal, they can do extraordinary things. Yes, but you have to be careful with what kind of goal you give them. So the first goal you need to give them to have a business is customer satisfaction, maintaining your customer base. That's the first goal you need to give them. The second goal is synchronicity, takt time. Now, if you give them a shared goal that each of them should reach, optimize their resources, optimize their department, that's a shared goal as well. Everybody understands that. But this synchronizes the whole business and creates a lot of waste. So absolutely, collective intelligence need. Collective intelligence in humans, it's different from animals. Collective intelligence in humans needs two things. One is a shared goal that makes sense. And again, synchronicity is very different from having a shared goal of optimizing everything. Second is fit to fact. People need facts to actually reason collectively. Now, what you find in most things, I mean, this is where, and again, TPS has a discipline, and this is, to me, the biggest difference from what I see in Japan and the rest of the world, even within Toyota, is how hard they drive for actual fact. The A3s or whatever, they get them to, you have to do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Go back and look more. Go back and look more. Bring me actual fact of where the tool hits the part, not an opinion. Now, the rest of the world, the business world is happy with opinions, and it's the loudest opinion or the most influential opinion or the highest paid person's opinion in the room that matters. But that's just opinion. So there's no intelligence, particularly there's no collective intelligence. So if you look at it from a collective intelligence point of view, you need two things. You need to get shared goals on the right things, and that's not easy. And then you need to make sure that people fit to fact, have people's thinking fits facts as opposed to opinions. And these two things take a lot of sugar for humans. It's very demanding for humans. It takes a lot of the third thing, it takes a lot of emotional maturity, because usually the facts go against you. We all love our ideas. We all have certainties. We need to believe. But the truth is, the fact is much more yin yang. It's a bit of both. It's like you're sure of something, and then you go and try it on the shop floor, and you discover, well, to some extent, yes. But facts are confusing because they never fit our ideas cleanly.
This reminds me of the oath that we used to take with Sensei Masaki Mai, and it goes something like that. It goes like, alone we are weak, together we are strong. We shall work together as a family with mutual trust and responsibilities. And this when we have the high engineers, high scale, all the top engineer, the CEOs, all of them holding hands and taking this oath. Till then, it is fine with them. Alone we are blah, blah, blah. Then comes the punchline, which says, my opinion is of no importance. What is of importance is the reality of the gamba.
Exactly. No, that's
and suddenly, the voice goes down. And as a matter of fact, the CEO once asked me, why doesn't my opinion count? So it was not me, it was Sensei.
What are your facts? What are your facts? It's not a matter of opinion. What are your facts? What do you actually know?
So at that point of time, I remember it was a long conversation, but he says, your opinion matters in a routine job, but not in an improvement job. What improvement job? You go to the Gamba, see and look at the reality of the situation. So your opinion is important for a routine type of job that you want to do, but not in a.
Yeah, that's the point. The point of opinion is that this is how humans work. Everybody has an opinion. Opinions are necessary. They're a starting point. We could not live without opinions. Opinions are fine as long as you're willing to check them. That's back to Deming, the PDCA. Everybody does PD, PD, PD. They never do C and A because it's costly. It's not just checking your facts. It's not just costly in terms of money. It's costly humanly. We don't like to do this. We want our opinion to matter as an opinion. Actually, checking your opinion, you have to think against yourself. You have to be, again, back to emotionally mature. Usually think about any time you've challenged somebody's opinion, they get angry, they get upset, they get avoidant. You're looking at a 10-year-old kid in a grown-up body, but they behave like absolute children, me included. I'm completely pleading guilty to this one. This is perfectly normal. We need to understand this. So basically, what we do in the lean transformation is create an environment where this happens less. It's still going to happen, but it happens less. And the distance we have with Toyota is Toyota has a discipline. It's a very hard discipline. It's not necessarily a nice place to work in, where this is not going to happen like this. You are supposed to back your opinion with fact. End of story. And when you look at it this way, you were mentioning your standardized work earlier. I think there's a great misunderstanding of standardized work. Standardized work is not about following standard steps. Standardized work is about testing your opinion of what you do with what we know we should do. It's again looking at the reality of how the work is done. with the standard in mind, as opposed to just following the steps. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of the profound business value of TPS, which is making more informed business decisions because everybody looks into the details a lot more and they're more knowledgeable. And back to Deming, a lot of the sources of variations I see are unchecked opinions. But you see it. I mean, if you get very pragmatically, think about a plastic injection plant or milling and drilling, or any kind of machine operation. You'll look at the setters, look at how they set the process. And, you look at, we know that setting the machines, you should do it the least possible. We know that it creates defects, change over time, that, and they're always fiddling. And what is fascinating is that no two guys set the machine the same way. It's a machine. There's absolutely no reason in the world that the machine has different settings. It's a machine. It's not a human. Humans, yes. Machines, no. But still, they will have different opinions. And because there's not enough managerial maturity to get them to test their opinions and compare them, one sets the machine one way, and I'm sure you've seen it. The other sets the machine the other way, and you have a huge variability in the results.
That's where the funnel experiment of Deming comes into the picture, and the 4 rules of tampering around with the system.
Tampering around with the system. And this is people do, they don't do it nastily, they don't do it out of intention. They do it because actually testing your opinions against fact is very hard. And this is back to the collective. If you don't have a culture of doing this, it's the same thing. I mean, Kaizen. The point about Kaizen is not coming up with an improvement, it's coming out with an improvement that works. So again, you have to test it again, and this is how to develop profound knowledge. A lot of people, I was interested in Deming, and I took a statistics class and realized how hopeless I was at statistics. But the one thing I came at, I still can't do statistics. But now I understand that you can't understand Deming without understanding statistics. It matters. It matters to go into the detail and look at what this is saying. Understand, business value is about making better decisions.
Yeah.
So business, first you need to make better customer decisions so that they remain a loyal customer base. That you need to make better purchasing decisions. And then you make decisions all the time. And then you have all these decisions bring cost. Now, most of the decisions are this is Herbert Simon, bounded rationality. They're just out of opinions. And they're extremely costly and nobody ever checks. So, no, this is it. This is it. When you create a culture of problem solving with checking your facts, when you create a culture of standardized work, not as a rule, but as a way to check what you think you know, when you create a culture of Kaizen to discover if what you think you know actually works, you end up making better decisions. And to me, that is the point of Deming's point of a theory of profound knowledge. Now, the interesting thing in today's business world, and we're no longer in the 90s, is that we've gone away from a very technical understanding to a more storytelling, pitch, convince the finance or whatever. You see all this sort of thing. And it destroys value because people make absolutely nonsense decisions. So the reason TPS is so strong in business terms is because it leads you to be more informed about what really goes on the gemba, and so make better decisions. If you take 2 executives that just have their opinions and their point of view and different interests, let's say the head of IT wants to put in a new ERP because his career is built on this, and the head of production that wants to keep with the same because it's going to be a disaster. As long as they just have their opinions, there is no possible agreement. There's no space to agree. The strongest or the more influential or the most Machiavellian or whatever is going to win. But if we have more information, if you have more facts, And if these people can share the same facts, they will come to a different place. They will come to different decision agreements and different decisions. So we're completely in the topic. We're completely in the topic of understanding the whole lean tools, people misunderstanding as Taylorist tools to produce productivity. I've never seen a lean tool do anything except get you to check your facts. Go and record, check your facts. Then if you have more facts and you have a mature executive, emotionally mature executives, they say, oh, that's interesting. The facts don't go the way I thought, but the facts are still very interesting. Let me change my mind and let's work on this. And if you collectively do this, which is what I've seen in the Toyota plants, you make better decisions. If you make better decisions, you make better business. Let me give you an example. Elon Musk. Ford's dream. You can have any car and you can have any Tesla you want, as long as it's a black or white one. This is Ford's dream in modern terms. I will build my cars in factories without anybody and complete machine process flow. And I will only give you 1 or 2 or 3 models, black or white. Correct? Now, this creates so much inventory, we can see it from space, right? According to LinkedIn, I've seen the photo, okay. Now, but it's brilliant. The guy's brilliant. And suddenly everybody wants to go full electric. An opinion. Now, Toyota, for years, they say Toyota is terrible. They don't want to participate to environment. Look at them, they're horrible. They're not going full electric. What are they doing? And Toyota is saying, well, guys, we have nothing against electric. We're working on it. But you have to understand, most of our customers, they don't have cheap electricity. If you go to Southern America, they need cars, and the only electricity they have is from gasoline generators. And actually, if you look at China, well, yeah, sure, they have all these electric cars, that electricity produced in coal plants. What? So it's not an opinion. We will give people, what we need to do is reduce the carbon footprint. That's a fact. So we will give people the car they want, and we will work on every one of these cars to reduce the carbon footprint. Perfectly logical. Nobody wants to hear it. And the most logical way to do it is through hybrids, because that fits people's lifestyle. Nobody wants to hear it. Toyota, I say, Toyota, you're so bad and so on. Look what happens 5 years later. Look what happens 5 years later. The decision they make. So I've seen a list of the best-selling cars. There's Tesla #1, and then the others. Toyota has 3 models in the top 10. That's a better business decision. So what we have here is decisions built on fact, on customer experience, on understanding what you do, make better business. That's all it is. Now, the interesting thing is that because people live in a world of opinion, they don't see that. They see the opinion, Toyota is going electric, not electric. And Toyota, and it's funny because at first the Toyota executives were so confused. They say, what are you saying? We don't have an opinion on that. We're not doing electric. Of course we're doing electric. Come on, we're the ones came up with the price. Of course we're doing this. But look at all our customers who can't afford electric. They're still here. You might not want to look at them, but they're still here. So we will not have an opinion. We have a series of facts that tell us that we're going to have a range. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what I was saying is, and the more I listen to people like you, the more I listen to people from the Western culture, and as we are moving forward, I'm getting different versions of the same thing. And that's is of interest to me, and that's what I keep sharing. One of the things that when we started with Sensei Masaki, we had only 2 pillars, as Jidoka and Jit, and suddenly we had this thing that has flamed up in the West more than I see down in our side and the East is respect for people and continuous improvement. Now, to me, respect for people were taught to mean in my house when I get up in the morning or get up in the evening? How is it that you walk into the factory and start respecting people? So I am in a process of hunting of what is trust, because everything depends on this word called trust. So I'm getting a lot of people to talk about trust. Trust means something differently. I just published, actually, you're on the 59th episode. The 58th episode was from the applied behavioral science point of view. So it's more of my
Okay.
understanding. It may be a selfish,
From a social psychology point of view, we have three elements to trust.
I mean,
From a social psychology point of view, we have three elements to trust. One is perceived competence. Two is perceived care. And three is perceived authenticity. So again, back to what we're doing with TPS or Deming, it's perceived competence. We're working on competence. You will trust more somebody who's competent than somebody you think is competent than somebody who's not. And of course, you will trust more somebody who has your best interest in mind and not just there. So that's the care. Now, the interesting thing is that you come as you are, because people trust also authenticity. If they see you pretend to be somebody you're not, they'll pick it up, and it's not good to trust. But we've gone a long way on the care. It's been a lot about care, but we forgot competence. And the problem I have with the industry right now, is particularly in the West, is that I don't trust people's competence anymore. I don't trust them to get it right the first time. So I think this is the whole TPS thing is about trust, but we have to be clear about how do you generate trust? And the first thing to generate trust is know what the hell you're talking about. Now we have a whole industry out there of people who don't think they have to know what they're talking about in order to talk about it. Now they can be very sweet people and very caring people, but that doesn't make them trustworthy, because you don't see them as competent. So this is what Jeff Liker calls a T development in Toyota. You develop people by making them more competent. That's the T part. And better at relationships. That's the caring part. But we need the both elements to create a trusting culture.
Yeah, I agree. The care part and the trust part. When I'm digging deeper into it, in any case, so something that is fascinating is the collective knowledge and the trust part, which comes into respect for people, etc. And this continuous improvement, as Deming himself had said, it is more of continuous improvement. That is what Sensei Masaki Mai also taught to us, is continual improvement. Is SDCD, SDCA, PDCA, SDC, and then you go up the line. And then I did talk to Dennis Dio Parker from Toyota and Eric Richardson, and I was talking about human capital formation with them, and they said, they carry the informal book with them, and it was Ernie Richardson who told me that they have to write three things after the Gamba walk. There is, whom did I develop today? What did I learn? And how do I measure it? And that's what for them, the leaders, the Gamba visit was a book which is not informal, but they make notes on that.
Again, there are lots of confusion. A lot of people are doing Gemba works now, but a Gemba work to me is about confirmation. Again, back to opinions of Gemba. You have your opinions about how things work, and the reason you go to the Gemba is to confirm. You have an opinion about the problem, and usually when you go to the Gemba, you realize the problem is completely different. So this is, again, back to competency for trust, but also just a simple Gemba, or you don't do Gemba to just walk around. You go to the Gemba with a hypothesis. You express your opinion to start with, because that's your starting point. And you have one. Every human being has opinions. And you confirm it on the Gemba. And usually this is a very rich moment, because the Gemba surprises you, because you realize that You were not necessarily wrong, but that's not what's going on. There's something else is going on. And so you learn something. And then the other thing that we are not very good at doing is following up on this learning. I mean, learning is like pottery, it's not architecture. You have to do the same thing again and again and again and again and again. And the way I set up learning is every week we say, did you see progress? And yes, and what kind of mistakes you've done again? So known mistakes, new mistakes sometimes, but usually known mistakes. And what you find is that people, again, humans are humans. They will repeat the same mistake again and again until finally they get it. So that's learning. And you need to follow up on the learning. It's not discovering something that's, aha, I get it. That doesn't make any sense. You've got to set up a structure in which you're going to follow up on what you saw to actually learn. If not, you just had a great idea. Fine. One more opinion.
Yeah, that's what Masaki Mai had only told us one thing. Kaizen means change for the better. And he used to always tell me that what are you today? You have to be a little more better tomorrow, a little more better tomorrow. That's a simple word that he used to tell us. He's never told us anything more than that. So that meant a lot to me. That how do you keep improving yourself? And as a matter of fact, there's another thing that you're talking about standards, and it was Dennis Dio Parker that told me. He is the older gentleman I mean, he joined, I think, probably a year after the Kentucky plant was started over there. And he's the second senior most gentleman, Dennis Dio Parker. And he was talking about setting a problem. I mean, although everything is working out fine, but what they do is they set the problem. And then they do the PDCA, this 8-step problem solving, and that's how they build.
But there's Toyota, and there's the gap between Toyota and a normal company is so huge. The question is, how do you get a normal company to start on the journey and to keep at it? That's my difficulty. Toyota has a culture that's been built over a century, so it's a different place. Now, the problem Toyota has is the problem we have everywhere. They have a problem of backslide. So I visited Toyota plants. Sometimes they're on the good level and they backslide. Sometimes I visited Toyota plants, not so good, because they bring in managers from the outside who don't understand the culture, and they bring their own culture with it. And then none of this starts working. So, but the real difficulty is, how do you start a company that is not Toyota on that path? And if you bring in Toyota techniques is like it's advanced level, So there's a thing that every beginner wants to be intermediate. Every intermediate guy wants to do advanced stuff, but actually it never works. So you have to start beginners at beginning level and then move them to intermediate and then move them to advanced. But people don't want to do that. They're beginners. They immediately say, I want to do the advanced stuff. And say, well, you can try if you want, but you'd better be really good at this, because chances are you need to learn the beginner stuff and the intermediate stuff before you get the advanced stuff. So that's been a difficulty as long as I studied the lean world, that Toyota is doing advanced stuff and most people are at a beginner level. And I was very lucky because I saw Toyota start in Europe. I saw the very first plant in the UK. I did my PhD looking at a supplier supplying Toyota's first part of the UK and how Toyota worked with them. And I had the incredible good luck of seeing them started. And it's very different at the beginning that it becomes at intermediate or advanced level.
When you talked about business as business solution and lean has got lean tools, where does this lean thing come about? There have been a lot of talk about lean thinking, critical thinking. The way I'm talking to you is that you have a certain hypothesis, a certain thought process, rational, and then you check it out in the Gemba and see how it works or doesn't work and make test out your hypothesis like most of the researchers do. They start with a hypothesis and then they
Sure.
come up with that. So where does this? It looks as if there's some magic in which people start thinking lean, start
No, there's no magic.
thinking critical
There's
thinking.
no magic. In my experience, the CEO starts. I work with CEOs, and I've done about, I don't know, 10 or 12 lean transformations. It started with the CEO. So the CEO who runs the business discovers and learns TPS. And they say, oh, that's smart. So then they make different decisions, and they have a second problem. They need to teach their guys, head of departments, TPS as well. And usually the head of departments don't want to hear about it. But sometimes you get one, and then two, and then you continue. But this is how you blend. You don't do projects. You teach TPS to the management line. And it's a bit slow, but your aim is to make better decisions. The point is that projects really don't help. The only thing that helps in project is a model line. A model line is smart because if you want to teach a CEO how it looks, that's what Shingo did. You do a model line and then you explain what they see. That's how I learned. That's how a lot of us learn. But the model line doesn't do anything for anybody else than the CEO because it's all about the decision making. The moment the CEO delegates lean to someone, that's it. You finish. You're done. Go home. No chance. Because the point is you need to make business decisions in a lean way. Now, this comes in every sort of thing. This comes in terms of capacity decisions, what kind of suppliers you choose, what kind of range of products you're going to develop, what kind of marketing strategy you have. Every one of these decisions, what kind of who you select, who you promote, every one of these decisions can be taken in a lean way, which is going to be different from the mainstream business. But you need to teach the people who make the decisions. Because if they themselves don't learn, there's got no chance. It's going to just get weird. So usually what you have is you have the CEO doing business in the business as usual way. And you have, he's heard or she's heard about lean. So she wants to do some lean and gives it to one of their guys and run a lean program. Okay, run a lean program. So you have a lot of guys doing tools and showing some good feedback, good results and so on, but it doesn't change the thinking of the management line. So you need to start from the top.
Yeah, but that's where we get stuck, right? That because the interests that they have across the line, across the hierarchies are totally different, or the priorities are different. And there is the CEO who is more interested to please the stakeholders. And so everybody knows that. Everybody talks about it, but nobody actually does it. That they're looking for a silver bullet, they're looking for short-time gains.
It doesn't
Everybody knows
matter.
about it, but they don't do anything about it.
It doesn't matter. Lean is not supposed to be for everyone. Lean is a way to make your business more competitive. If you can't be, if the CEO and the management team can't be bothered to make their business more competitive, fine, somebody else will. Lean is not made for everyone. Toyota is the most competitive business of the auto industry. Nobody disputes that. So if you are rational, you say, well, I want to learn what they know. Most people don't want to do that. That's fine. That's completely fine. It's a free world. It's a competitive world. If you think that you have a better way to compete with, I don't know, Michael Porter or a full digital or whatever, go for it. We'll see. You have competing experiments. The only thing is, the people I talk to, the people say, no, the way I want to compete is through lean. Okay, so let's talk. But the starting point is that they've made up their mind beforehand. I don't have to make up their mind. I can help them with how. I can't help them with deciding to do it. They have to decide. They're in charge of their competitiveness. So that's their job.
I like what you said because this resonates with what Artmont talked to you about. I think it was it last year or something like that when I talked to him, and he just said that, look, it's just a leap of faith. If
Yes.
you want to do it, you do it.
Yeah.
If you're not convinced that it's not, then don't even try it. Of course, he never said it in all that word. He did say that it's a leap of faith. And you have faith and you know what it is, go for it. And I like what you said. Lean is not meant for everybody. It's just because it's in fashion, it's in vogue to say we're not doing lean, we are being lean. That's a catchy line because I've seen many people who are saying that we are being lean, they're actually doing lean. And okay, these are all certain marketing gimmicks that many of
There's
us
people who
realize.
being lean. I don't know what that means. There's people who are doing lean. No. And then there's people who learn to think lean. Then there's hope. And the results, business results. So the guys I work with, I have in front of me, are CEOs who commit themselves to think lean. They want to figure it out. When they think lean, they make different decisions, different investments, different activities on the shop floor, which makes them more competitive. People who do lean are usually thinking the same old way and making lean stuff that goes nowhere. So this is the 2-year program that disappears, and then they start again with something else. It's called lean thinking for a reason, because you have to change your way of thinking.
Yeah, this brings me back. I like what you said. Let's not talk about lean, fake lean, that lean, this lean. You hear a lot about it. And what I like talking to you and what really sunk in right now is lean is not meant for everybody, it's optional. If you think lean and you say that it works for me and I'll make it work, go ahead and do it. Why do you want to label a product and say this has not worked for me, so it will not work for you? That's
It's a competitive question.
yeah.
Do you want to compete? If you're serious about competing, not looking at Toyota is irrational. They're the strongest competitor around. If you are serious about competing, you're going to be curious about what they do, and you're going to try to figure out how they do it. It just makes sense. Most people say, hey, I'm not looking at Toyota, but look, I'm doing all this lean stuff. And you go, well, okay, if you want, go ahead. It's free world. But there's absolutely no hope for business results.
There's this the book that you wrote on respect for people, right? I'm not getting the title right.
Leading with respect.
Leading with respect. I know. I mean, the orders are going tomorrow, and I'm quite curious about it. What was your basic theme in that?
Respect in the lean sense is respect for the autonomy of people. So how do you lead people? By developing them. How do you lead people in a way that they get that you get their autonomy zones and that you grow their autonomy zones? And so this is what TPS is about, is it's leadership, is not management. And you give people the tools to grow, to learn more, and to develop better relationships, essentially. Not all people want that. And this is what you have to understand. Again, it's not for everybody. And in your company, usually a company the people at the top are the more aggressive. Sometimes you're lucky, they're just the more assertive, but often they're the more aggressive. They're not necessarily the smartest. And certainly they're not the most flexible and the more learning types. So what leading with respect really means is you create an environment where the smart people can get to the top, not just the more aggressive. And my experience is this completely turns around your company. But it doesn't happen on its own. So you need to build an environment where people can do that. So you were saying about improvement and learning, all these things are true, but the job of a leader is to build an environment where this is possible. And again, this goes back to technically how do you do it? But this is a commitment. And when I hear business is all about making money, I personally don't believe that. I think it's about building an environment in which people can grow and learn to work better. This will make money over the long term. It will make money tomorrow because they stop doing stupid things. But they learn how to make money for the future. And I think that's what really matters. But you need to create these kind of environments are not, I think that's the thing, they're not natural to human beings. They're not intuitive. They need care, they need to know how to do it. It's a craft. And this is where TPS is so useful because it tells you how to do it. Business is not philosophical. You need to build a customer base of people who are willing to buy what you sell, whether it's service or whether it's books, and give you their cash for it. And growing a business is building a loyal group of people who are your customers that will grow. It's not getting a new one and losing another one. It has to grow. In order to do this, you have to renew what you offer them. So there's a whole lean engineering thing that you have to give them what they like, but also give them something new because their problems change, the life changes, and so forth. And you've got to do this in a cost-effective way because if not, if you have no profit, you can't reinvest and you can't survive. Now, so the first thing about business is understanding. So you're going to buy and sell things, but the question is what? So the first thing about business is how do you grow your customer base, which means what are your product decisions? Then you get to how do you make those products? And finally, you get to operations and supply and so forth. Now, the lean part of it is, again, look at when it works well, look what it doesn't. Usually you'll find that when it doesn't, somebody did something for you to make it work. Usually you'll find that when you're short of product A is because somebody was building product B instead. Usually you'll find is that because businesses are not invested in being flexible, they need better forecasting, and forecasting is always wrong. How can we forecast that suddenly the US are going to put tariffs on everybody? You can't forecast it. What you can have is people who are smart and fast and flexible and operations that can follow to deal with it. So this is the lean part. The lean part is you teach people to understand the facts of what they do, the theories they have, and to collaborate. So you can build a loyal customer base as circumstances change. Now, usually business is not set up that way. Business is set up in a way that the processes are defined and we put people in there and they have to follow the process. And then we want to optimize them with lean tools. We separate the problems in a weird way. So how do you bring business and lean together? You understand that lean is a development method for executives. The CEO learns TPS, then he teaches an executive to learn TPS. Now they see business problem in a different way, and they look for mistakes. They look for waste. They look for muda. They look for decisions that don't make sense. First thing, I wrote a book called Raise the Bar with three brilliant guys. The guys who founded the company started with nothing. It's now a 2 billion company, €2 billion company. So massive success. And the first conversation we had was with one of the leaders of this company. We were on the factory floor, and he was telling me that he wanted to build a new factory. And I said, why? Look at the unused capacity you have here in inventory and all sorts of things. You can reach your target numbers in this factory without having to build a new one. And he said, okay, show me how. And we did it. And this is typically, you could have, the decision to build a new factory would have cost him a lot of money. So in this case, he had a business problem. He needed to increase production. And he went about it the lean way, which is have a better use of the existing factory. Does that make sense? You see what I mean? So this is exactly a situation where you have a business problem. You need to double the volume because the market is asking for it. But you do it in a lean way because you take the waste out of the existing factory and you stop the stupid decision of putting a lot of money into a new factory that would be not used because you don't need all that capacity. So this is what I mean by bringing the business and lean together. You see business issues, and then you teach your executive team to solve them in a lean way.
Oh, that's great. There's a lot of thoughts in my head, and I'm not leaving you that fast, so I'm going to stop recording this episode, but rest be assured I'm going to come back to you because I'm quite fascinated by Freddie, your father, and he had put the 4Fs for problem solving. Probably when I'm going to catch you fast, the 4Fs that I was so impressed upon was of problem solving, and you have also written on that. I think I don't know which book because I read most of your summaries.
That wasn't Friday. It was the last visit I did with him. The 4F came out of visiting a Chinese Taiwan factory. I was with Freddie then, but it was mostly working with Dan Jones and Ori Fume and Jack Shez. That was after Freddie's time.
Yeah, that was find, face, frame, form,
Yes.
and
Yes.
day-to-day details. I think give me time, probably this month or next month, and we just
With pleasure.
look at it. Because one of the things that you did put up in one of the books, I think in the early days, probably, where you said that the problems that you solve would create a problem somewhere else unless you get the total picture of it.
Exactly.
Because that's a system.
That's right. Your solution is somebody else's problem. That's a fact, and you know that. And again, it's back to collaborative problem solving, is understanding that, and that when you come up with a solution, you talk to the other guys, say, okay, how is my solution creating problems for you? And then you Kaizen. So the point of Kaizen is we decide we're still going to put in the solution, but we will Kaizen away all the other problems it causes.
Thank you very much, and
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to stop recording, but I'll have a word with you